Hey, what's happening, everybody? It is a Friday night, and you know that means woohoo! That's awesome. I didn't think that would be like that. There we go. Much better. Now, what that usually means
that was perfect.
It's time for a store report, but due to scheduling, tonight's Friday night event will be this Roy's Typhoon. And yeah, that was so epic with it just like over your face. I always forget to use the Typhoon, so here it is. Yay!
Hey, everybody on Secret Beach.
What's happening, buddy? I will tell you as a heads up, even though it doesn't really matter because it's about the presentation, you have about the same quality as my mom's internet.
Yeah, I am on DSL, so
yeah.
If we really get bad, we can always try to switch over to my. I do have the ability to switch over to 4G if necessary. So
yeah, I mean the good thing is we're here to see the presentation. That should be clear. And so cheers to everybody. Welcome to Friday night. We've made it another week. Yes.
Yeah, thankfully.
Yes. Now, if you don't know what we're talking about tonight, if you look behind Roy, you'll understand we're talking about bra and panties tonight. Oh, I mean camping gear.
Oh, wait. Okay. I thought maybe I sat down in the wrong room there for a second.
I was say wrong presentation.
That'll be for a different night. That'll be part 2, Jason.
Oh, I love it. So yeah, speaking of part 2, Roy lives in the Pacific Northwest, is an outdoorsman, and knows all this stuff very well. And I can't imagine really, unless you live in the city. And when I mean in the city, like in New York City, in downtown Chicago, unless you live there, any thrift store, any garage sale, people are going to have some outdoor gear. Roy sees a lot more than some of us will because of the Pacific Northwest, but there's plenty of hiking around here. There's boating because of Lake Mead. So this kind of stuff is everywhere. Plus, when we're allowed, a lot of us travel. So Roy is going to be entertaining us tonight with part 1 because he's like, all right, there's too much to do in one thing. So we'll do it in multiple things down the road. So without further adu, I'm going to leave and give you the floor, sir.
Yeah. Jason, it's funny you should say that, you won't find, you struggle to find the stuff in the city. One of the best stoves that I'm going to show you tonight that I found, I actually found in Portland. So in towards the downtown area, in fact. So,
all right. Cool.
It is literally everywhere. So hello, Secret Beach guy, combers. Just probably should take a moment here to kind of give you some background so you understand where I'm coming from and how I've come to understand camp stoves and outdoor gear and things of that nature. And I'll give you maybe a little insight into how I think about this stuff. So I was very fortunate to be raised in the Pacific Northwest. It's beautiful up here. And contrary to what most people say, no, it doesn't rain all the time. It's just always overcast. I was raised in the outdoors with my family, with my father and my grandfather, mostly a hunting family. And of course, camping comes along with that. Very early in my life, my father got me involved in Boy Scouts. So of course, there came the hiking and things of that nature. I was always a part of groups that, quite frankly, if you were to do the things that they did with us in Boy Scouts when I was in it in the 70s and 80s, they would probably arrest you for child endangerment. I've slept on the side of Mount Rainier a couple times in a snow cave that was hand dug. That was always fun. We've backpacked all over Washington, several of the different states. So that love for the outdoors has continued throughout my life. In addition to doing all that, Rhonda and I, my wife, we ran an archery shop in the very late 90s and early 2000s. And of course, I got very much into backcountry backpacking for hunting purposes. And so I was very much into the understanding all the gadgets and the things that were out there at that time. And
I got gadgets and gizmos aplenty.
What was that?
I got gadgets and gizmos aplenty.
Uh-oh. But plenty of opportunities to be outdoors, and in fact, in addition to the Boy Scouts, Jason, just like Jason, I was at one time a card carrying Girl Scout. And my wife and I ran the Girl Scout troop for a couple of years there. So my love for the outdoors and gadgets has gone on for a lot of years. And I am not a collector, but I am a user that has a collection, and it might get a little, if you ask my wife, it's probably a little excessive. So let's get into talking about Grandpa's camp stove and other outdoor gears and flipping them and see if we can't make some money. And the first thing we're going to want to do is, thanks, Debbie. I appreciate that. I didn't know that I could mute Jason, but he's half the fun of doing these things. So
no, you can't.
No. All right. We're having just. All right. So sorry, folks. We're having minor technical difficulties here, it seems. There we go. Maybe everything will start to slow down. The squirrels in my DSL will stop chewing on the cables and we'll be all right. So, all right. So what in the heck are we doing here? I'm hoping over the next hour that we're sitting here chatting that you will start to figure out that this stuff is actually everywhere. I promise you, whether you're in the city, whether you're at a thrift store, you're at an estate sale or yard sale, you are stepping over this stuff. You probably just don't realize it because a lot of times when you go to take a look at a stove, it's not just sitting out in the open where you can see it. Okay. It's usually hiding, and it's usually hiding in plain sight. And I'm going to hopefully help you identify where you can actually find those things. With it being everywhere, you obviously don't want to try to spend all your time looking up every individual item. What my goal is to help you understand what you can take and step over, and what you should probably take 20 to 30 seconds to look up on your phone. And I'm going to teach you, at least on the Coleman stuff and some of the other stuff, how to actually look it up very, very quickly, the information that you need to actually put into your phone for your information gathering, and make a quick assessment as to whether the price is worth it or not, and to move on. Now, with that it's everywhere, and you will literally, once you start to find it, understand that this is not get rich quick. There is a plethora of it. It can be worth good money. Most of your bread and butter items, you're looking at anywhere from 50 to a couple $100, which is a nice flip if you're only paying $5 or $10 for it, right? But it's not stuff you're going to find every day. But when you do, it's usually good. And now I do say that, but there are some stoves and there are some lanterns that, while you won't get rich, they will certainly put a very healthy down payment on your next secret beach cruise. And some of them can even pay for that, and then all the drinks to go along with it. So I will show you a couple examples as we go through, but just understand that you're going to have to dig through a lot of coal to find those particular diamonds. And as we go through, I'm also going to teach you how to test them a little bit. I'm going to give you just enough information to be dangerous, and where to go take and find the information and be safe when you're doing it. And then hopefully we'll give you at the very end, we'll give you a couple tips on what you need to do to make sure you ship it and you get it to your customers safely. So really, this is just a primer. And as Jason said, there is a ton to this, and we can easily do a part 2, because tonight what we're going to be talking about is, camp stoves and lanterns here. All right. Sorry, guys. There you go. So when you get out and you start going to the yard sales and estate sales and things of that nature, what are you looking at? What are you looking for in particular? Remember, I said that a lot of times these are going to be taken and hiding in plain sight. They'll be hiding in things like a container. Oh, there we go. They'll be sitting in an accessory. They won't be sitting out just like this as an item. Many times you'll find them in the original packaging or the box, like this stove right here. Okay. Oh, like this in this big cardboard box right here. You'll find them in the accessory containers, not necessarily sitting out in the wide open. And more than likely, they're not going to be sitting up on a table. Most times they're sitting back in the corner. And I've bought more than one or two of them from inside somebody's garage that was hanging there that they didn't actually intend to sell. Now, there are two main types of fuel source that you will find when you're out looking for these things. So Jason, if you can put me on the big screen here real quick so I can show them an example. This is a gas stove, or is a gas lantern, right? You see this right here, that is where you can put the fuel in, right? So you can put the fuel in. Most of them have a pump. All right. Most of them have a pump like this right here, where you actually pressurize the system, and then you light the item, whether it be a lantern or a stove. Okay. This most times is a gas. This is a gas stove. And most times they have a pump, not always, but they always have a place to go put the fuel. All right. Now, that's what you're looking for. You're not looking for propane. Okay. This is a propane lantern. All right. See the bottle here? All right. There's an example of a propane bottle. Right? You're not looking for a propane lantern or a propane stove. Those are the things that propane is a waste of time. Step over it. Don't worry about it. There is one exception, and I'm going to show you that a little later. But for the most part, especially if it says Coleman on it, it's propane, just step over it. There are some of those things that are worthwhile, but for the most part, just walk over them. Here, just so you know, when it comes to propane, here's another example of a propane bottle. That's a skinnier version, but they're certainly they're disposable. Once they're done, you throw them away. They're expensive to use. They're very convenient. Most people really like them, but at the end of the day, this is not what you're looking for when you're looking for a stove or a lantern. Okay. All right. You can go ahead and bring up the slide deck back up, Jason. All right. So when you start finding your gas lantern or your gas stove, you want to take and look for the original packaging. If you find an item, especially a stove or a lantern, and you look at it and it is in exceptional shape, like you look at the bottom and there's no wear, and it looks like it may have only been lit once or twice, start looking around for that original packaging, because especially the older ones, if they've been around for 20, 30, 40 years and they're still in pristine shape, they've been in something to keep them there, right? And a lot of times what I will find is that I'll find the lantern or I'll find the stove, and I start looking around and I'll find the original packaging. Next thing you want to start looking at is the manufacturer, identifying who it was. And I'm going to teach you I'm going to show you some of the three primary ones you should be looking at. And you want to make sure to try to find the model on it, because that's going to be the fastest way for you to start looking them up. Then if it's a Coleman, you will have a date code, which will actually tell you the month and the year that it was manufactured. I'm going to show you how to take and actually read those. And then if it's a lantern, you want to take and see if the globe is still there and what kind of shape it is, what kind of shape it's in. And if you can see right here, so this one is marked as a Coleman. That actually came off a 80s Coleman stove. There we go. See if we can see it again. There. Now you should be able to read it right here. Okay. And you want to look and make sure that it's in original shape. A lot of times what you'll find is around these edges here, you'll see that there's little flea bites in them. And when you list them, it's not a deal breaker if you find them and it has flea bites in them, but you most certainly want to take and make sure that you identify that in your listing. Again, not a deal breaker. These things are pretty tough. I've never had one break when I'm shipping them, because I'm going to show you how I do it. And but you would be surprised. I've carried these things around for 40 years, and lanterns that I've probably broken 2 in that time. But again, you want to make sure that it is a Coleman original. or you'll also see sometimes it's still a Coleman product, but it'll say Pyrex on it. Okay. All right. Back to the slides. All right. The other thing you want to make sure when you get a hold of it and you find it is, does the tank hold pressure? Because you're going to have to decide, are you mechanically inclined and do you want to mess with it? If it doesn't hold pressure, then you need to take and decide, is it still worth selling it for just for parts? Now, I will tell you, there's some lanterns and there's some stoves that even if they don't hold pressure and you're selling them just for parts, it's well worth your time to do that. But the easiest way to take and tell if the tank holds pressure is you will take, remember that little pump I told you about? Right there. Okay. It actually screws down and tightens down. You can open up the valve like that. There's a little hole in the very end. Put your finger over the top of it and just start pushing. And you will feel when the tank starts to build pressure. When you're doing that, if you start seeing any kind of fuel come out of the top, or you start hearing any kind of hissing sound, stop, because it's not going to hold pressure. It's not a deal breaker, but you'll have to decide how mechanically inclined you are if you want to go start and fix it. 95% of the issues with any of these stoves or lanterns that you'll find, it's going to be a repair on those. It's actually pretty easy if you're mechanically inclined, but again, you have to ask if you're willing to go deal with it. And then one of the other things, the next thing you want to start looking at is the finish and kind of wear and tear on it. Here's the stove right here. You want to start looking at things like dings and dents in the top. That's a ding and dent in the enamel. You want to start looking at wear and tear on the bottom of the lantern. And I would pull out the stove, but those things are like 2 foot across. So really you want to start looking and seeing what the labels look like and everything else. Again, I'd show you a stove, but they're awfully big to try to sit here and hold in front of the camera. But overall, you want to start looking at the condition, and you can start telling if you start looking in here, down in here, whether they've been lit or not, and how much use they've had. As you can see, this one actually has quite a bit of rust on it. It's a decent little stove. I'm going to show you some examples of this exact one here in just a little bit. So those are all the things you're going to start looking at to see and assess if you've decided to buy it, how much it's going to be worth, if it's worth your time to take and try to flip it. Because those lanterns alone can range anywhere from about $30 sold all the way to $400 to $500. And I'll show you some, like I said, I'll show you some examples of those. All right, let's go back to the slide deck there. And then lastly, you want to start looking and making sure that it has all the accessories to it. All right. So once you have found the item, you've determined that it's gas, you've identified all the original packaging, if it's there, what you've got, your manufacturer, what kind of shape it's in, start looking for the accessories, because like I said, a lot of times they'll be sitting in boxes just like the one that's over my shoulder here, the red case, or they'll be sitting in bags like this. They'll also take and have little funnels that can go with them. And Rhonda, could you hand me that 1, 2, 3 stove up there? That one up there, the stevia? Yeah, that one. They can have accessories like this stove that actually has a little cup and a little handle. And most importantly, the key that actually turns the stove on and off. And then it also serves as a wrench for the stove. All right. So once you've found it, start looking around on the tables and looking around in the boxes and things of that nature, and make sure if you've decided that you're going to buy it, that you get as many of the accessories as possible. I'm going to show you a little later that even if you can't find the stove or the lantern, but you can find the accessories, you can make some good money too. All right. All right. So let's start getting into brands and let's start getting into brands here. There we go. There we are. I think we stopped getting to slide advance too many slides. All right. Now here is a list of brands of lanterns and stoves that you could possibly find out there. This list is not all inclusive. Believe me, there's way more out there. You have people in addition to these like Jetboil and Brunton and a tremendous amount of others. Most of them, though, most of those companies are going to be newer companies. It's not likely you're going to find them. And when you do, most times, especially if you find them at a yard sale, people are going to know what it is they have. They're not going to let go of it very easily for the price it's going to make it worth your while. But these are the main ones you're going to find. In fact, Coleman will be 90% of what you find. Okay, Coleman is a very prolific company, and you will literally find it everywhere. They've sold lanterns, they sold stoves, they've sold generators, backpacks, sleeping bags, you name it. Coleman has put their label on it, including trailers today and pop-up trailers, things, all sorts of different things of that nature. So Coleman lanterns and stoves are 90% of what you're going to find. The other two that I want you to take and really keep an eye out for, which are highlighted in the blue, is Optimus and Primus. And the easiest way I can help a new person figure this out and remember those is just remember the Transformers. Always remember Optimus Prime and Primus. They were actually two Transformers. So for every geek like me that's about my age that was around when the Transformers hit, you'll always be able to take and remember Optimus and Primus. Those are two companies that those two and Coleman are the three companies I want you to take and always keep in mind when you're outsourcing and you actually have an opportunity to look for this stuff. If you find those three, start looking. It's time to start looking it up. The Sears stuff was actually never manufactured by Sears. They were actually manufactured by Primus or Coleman. They can be worth some money if you find the right ones, but before you start looking them up, make sure they're good in good shape, as well as the thermos. I threw the MSR in there because that is actually my favorite company and some of my favorite stoves. They are famous for a stove called the Whisper Light, which is very popular with the mountaineering groups. They've been making it for years. Some of the original ones can be worth very good money. But again, just like I was saying when we first started this slide, if you find one of those, 90% of the time people know what they have. They're not going to let go of it. So again, to reinforce, you've got Coleman and then the Transformers, Optimus and Primus. Those are the three when we're walking away. If you want to write them down or copy this slide and take it with you, those are the three that you're looking for. Of course, I skipped over Peak One here in my list. It is a Coleman company. All of them will say Coleman on them, but you'll see big Peak One in big bold letters on them. So those are worth, those can actually be worth good money if you find the right ones. Thanks, Debbie. Okay. All right. So let's start talking about Coleman. Again, Coleman is 90% of what you're going to find out there. You're going to be tripping over it once you start realizing how to go find this stuff. I will guarantee you that I don't go a weekend without finding at least a Coleman lantern or stove to take and look up really quick. They were founded in 1900 by William Kaufman Coleman in Kansas. So this is a USA company. That's one of the key things is when you're looking at them, if they're marked and you find them made in the USA, you're probably good. If you find stuff that's made in China, definitely move on. It's newer. It's not something that you're probably going to be interested in. Okay. They started out as a lantern company in 1900. So Mr. Kaufman or Mr. Coleman started working at his dining room table, putting these gas lanterns together. And you got to think about this. In the 1900s, these things were used. These weren't necessarily, at this time when they started, these weren't necessarily camping gear. This was everyday use items that were a gas-powered pressurized lantern. So if you find some of the early models of the Colemans, you're not likely to find things that are in extremely great shape. they're going to be used, and the collectors who collect these things realize that. Okay. They also produced stoves in the early days, but they were primarily a lantern company. And their first lantern was the ArcLight series. It was mass produced, and it was actually the lantern that lit the very first evening football game or night football game west of the Mississippi. So the Coleman Company actually gave, I believe it was in Kansas, Kansas State, gave them a bunch of lanterns. They hung them up, and they actually used Coleman lanterns to light the evening game, the first evening game west of the Mississippi. And so that was
how many lanterns was
that's kind
that?
of a fun little fact for them. What was that?
How many lanterns was that to light a whole football game?
You know, with the way Monday Night Football gets lit up like the face of the sun now, I couldn't imagine how many lanterns it took to actually.
Here's your 10,000th lantern.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever been out in the middle of nowhere with these lights. When you light just one or two, they can put out some light. But still, again, I couldn't imagine trying to play football by them. All right. So again, they did sell stoves as well at that time. I'll show you an example of that here in just a little bit. But really, again, primarily a lantern company. And if you find them before the 1940s, you have found yourself a nice little piece of history. All right. Now, they were chugging along there for about 40 years when the federal government took and came by during World War II and said, hey, Coleman Company, we could really use a small, lightweight pocket stove for our GIs to be able to take out in the field. Now, I'm going to show you this pocket stove in a minute, and they must have had huge pockets. But anyway, in 1942, the Coleman Company took and helped out the federal government. And in 1942, they sent 5,000 of them into North Africa as part of the invasion in World War II. The wonderful date codes that I was talking about started in approximately 1951. The GI stoves are marked, just so you know, and I'll show you that as well. And as I mentioned previously, they made stoves and lanterns, and they've made other products as well for multiple other companies. They are a big company for building something and then allowing somebody else to put their name on it and sell it as theirs. All right. So here is an example of some of their very first lights. Okay. These are all arc light lanterns, and they can really be, yes, they can really be identified by their huge, beautiful globe. They were built and made out of brass or nickel-plated brass. And here's what I will tell you, that if you are outsourcing and you find one of these and it's less than a couple $100, my instructions to you is you are to buy that lantern, and then you are immediately to put it in secured in your car. Look me up on Facebook and PM me and send me a message, because it's garbage and it needs to be gotten rid of. So I will PayPal you the money and you can ship it to me, and I will dispose of it properly. So just like Jason's Sarah, these need to be gotten rid of. I'm only kidding. You can tell by the prices here. If you find one without the globe and even without the top piece, you're looking at an easy $1,000 payday. They are insanely rare. I have never found one of these in the wild. I have seen them, and when they're restored, they're absolutely gorgeous. When I was doing the research for this presentation, I found one that they claimed to be unlit that sold for $5,000 and $500 shipping. So if you end up finding one of these, they're incredible. They were actually marked with two different names. You can find them not only with Coleman, but also if you look in the top right-hand listing there, it was the Yale Light Company. You can also find them marked under the Yale Light Company. They were manufactured by They were manufactured by Coleman, though. Yeah, $5,000. I would love to be able to find one. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, though, because they're just absolutely gorgeous stoves. Or, excuse me, lanterns. Now, of course, circling back to the GI stove, they called this their GI pocket stove. I have actually found this on about 3 different occasions that bought and sold. And remember what I said, you're actually walking by this stuff. When I found every single one of them, they were in the container that you see on the right-hand part of the slide there. They are about double the size of a 12-ounce soda can, and they look completely nondescript. The ones that I have sold, I found one that was in good shape, had been used. I sold it right around the $200 range, all the way down to one. The worst one I found was in such bad shape that I didn't even dare put fuel in it. Yes, Debbie, that would definitely pay for a cruise for sure, no doubt. The one that was the cheapest that I found, again, it was in such bad shape. I wouldn't even put fuel in it. I'm pretty mechanically inclined and willing to fix them most of the time. I just sold it for parts, and if I remember right, I listed it for right over $100, and I ended up selling it for right around $90 within a day. So these are very popular. They sell very quickly if you price them correctly. And again, what you're going to find them in is you will not find them sat out on the table and set up like you see in the pictures of what they look like. You're going to find it in the case more than likely. Okay. And also, just for a fun fact, they called that a pocket stove. That thing weighs like 5 pounds without fuel in it. Those things are huge. In comparison to what I call a pocket stove today, Jason, if you can help me out with the full screen there. This, you see how small that is? That is a modern pocket stove that will take and fold out, and that you can actually carry in your pocket and use. And it uses fuel canisters like this. Okay. If you find one of these, their resale value is not huge. If you can find it for a couple bucks, this little lanterns or this little stove is about $50 on the used market. And when I pack it all up and I'm actually backpacking and taking it, it actually fits with all my camp stuff right there. This is a cup that I've used for years and been backpacking with it for probably 20 years. So again, our GIs had to deal with a pocket stove like that. And Miss Lisa, I don't understand what you mean by, is that a white, or what is the white thing in the case?
I think she's thinking that's white. It's actually silver.
Yeah.
The thing next to the burners.
Silver.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is not what comes in that. The stove that you see there on those pictures is what comes in that case.
Yep.
Okay. When you pick it up, you're going to feel weight. I mean, it, like I said, it weighs 4 or 5 pounds. All right. Now, great, Roy. You've told me to go out and look for these things and give me an idea what to start looking for. In other words, it's accessories and it is in the original package, but really, is there a market for these things? And I'm here to tell you there is. I went and did a quick search prepping up for this thing. And all I typed in was Coleman lantern. Now understand, when you type in Coleman lantern, that's going to give you a result of not only all the lanterns, but all the parts as well. Okay. So there was 8,746 returns. Okay. Sorted them by the highest price, and the top 75 were over $500. I don't know about you, but I think that will put a nice down payment on a secret beach cruise. All right. The top 2,000. So the top 2,000 returns were over $100. So the top almost 25% were over $100. If you look at that lowest listing, that was actually 17 lanterns that they sold in one listing. They took a best offer on it. It shows $300 shipping. I don't know about you, but 17 lanterns, I could probably ship it for about half of that. And my tummy tells me that somebody probably paid around $700 to $800 for that whole grouping. And believe me, I opened up that group of 17 lanterns, and none of them were anything to write home about. They were in rough shape. Looked like they had been towed behind a Dodge for several miles down a dirt road. They were rough.
Now, why a Dodge?
What's up, Jason?
Why a Dodge? As opposed to, say, a Ford or a Chevy?
Because they're my least favorite.
Oh, okay. It just struck me. I'm like, why was he so specific? Oh, towed behind a 67 Dodge Dart.
I didn't say a Ford, though, which is what you own, right, Jay?
Right. Yeah, that's why I was just wondering.
I'm personally a Toyota guy, but.
Oh, goodbye.
So, again, it was 17 lanterns, none of them to write home about. And just looking through the listing real quick, there's several of them that I have bought and flipped in years past, and rarely would I pay more than $10 for them. So if you look at that, you got 17 lanterns at a $10 average price. So that's what, $170 purchase price, selling for $700. I don't know about you, but I'll take that payday any day of the week and twice on Sunday. All right. So, okay, great. Lanterns sell, but do the stoves sell? They are not as prolific when it comes to Coleman. I'm going to show you the other two companies, and that's where you really want to take. And yes, I am definitely a Toyota fan. That is where you want to take. And thanks, Jay. All right, he's going to pee on my Toyota. It can take it. Oh. Uh-oh. Minor technical difficulties here. There we go. Back to the stoves, and is there a market? Again, I did the same search as the lanterns. Remember, it will bring up all of the parts as well. But it was a little over 3,000 listings that came up. Highest price, the top 12 were over 500, and the top 850 were over $100. Now, if you look at some of the stoves and the size stoves that they can be, I wouldn't necessarily be overly excited about something, right, that was 24 inches wide and 18 inches tall and 6 inches deep and selling for $100 and free shipping. But if I only paid $5 for it and I could sell it for $100 and I could get the shipping in addition to that, it's worth my time to take and test it and list it up. Now, different from the lanterns and the things that I personally like about the stoves is the diversity. Most of the lanterns, they all look the same. I'm going to show you some of the key differences to look for, though, just so you know what to step over. But really, the stoves, there's all sorts of different stoves. If you look at the 4 listings there, those are the top 4 listings for stoves that were just brought up this week that sold in the last 90 days. And the highest one being right at $1,000. That is a 1970s stove. I actually own a stove very similar to that, but just in a different color. All the way to a little small single burner stove that was built during the Korean War, which that one sold, if I remember right, for right around almost $900, to a 1920s version right below it, which is absolutely huge, probably weighs about 50 or 60 pounds. I've only seen a couple of these in my lifetime. They are really cool when they're all dressed up and cleaned up. And then lastly, that bottom listing, that is an Exponent stove. It's made by Coleman. It is a single burner backpacking stove built in the 90s, and it sold for $630. So again, they're worth taking your time to look up, even the stoves. Now, let's start talking about the date codes, because that is what's going to help you the most to be able to determine what it is that you have. Okay. Now, it's so easy. Even a guy like me, I'm not the smartest bulb in the brightest bulb in the chandelier. And even I can figure out how to take and read a Coleman date code. It's very simple. It's two-digit numbers. The left one is always going to be the month, and the right one is always going to be the year. Pretty simple, right? Again, left one being the month, so 1 to 12, and the right one being the year. The only one you're really worried about is the year code, because what you're going to do when you go to look it up is you want to take and you want to look up Coleman, you want to look up the model, and you want to look up the year code. Okay. Those three things entered into your search engine: Coleman, model, and year code. And within 30 seconds, you're looking up and very quickly being able to determine, is this thing worth it? Of course, you're going to bring up, depending on what item it is, you could bring up several hundred solds. So that's when you have to go back to some of those things that I was talking about at first of what you need to look for. You know, what kind of condition is it in? Does it have the original packaging? All those other things to start getting an idea of whether this lantern or this stove is really worth my time. Now, if you do that, you put in the code and you put in the model and you put in the year and you start your search, this is what will come up for you here. Okay. Again, that picture that you saw was this lantern right here. That's actually part of my personal collection. I have sold half a dozen of these over the last 4 years. And that's your, the slide is what came up earlier this week. So anywhere between $50, looking like hammered sauce, again, drug behind a dog down a dirt road, all the way in this year code at 120 or about $132. Sorry, my internet speed is giving us some fits here to getting the clarity on the slides there. But it's right at $135 plus shipping. So I don't know about you, $135 plus $20 shipping is well worth my time to go pick up a lantern like that for $10 to $20 and flip it. Okay. Now this also works for the stoves. Now the stoves, I've usually found the date code on the bottom of the stove, but sometimes it's actually on the back. Okay. So take and do the same thing. You enter both and you start to find out, well, there was only 2 listings for this one. Not very exciting, right? But what I don't want you to do is think, okay, well, then I need to take and just discard all of the 425F stoves that I ever see, which is the model. 425F is the model. There's multiple other models that they could have. No, it's 429 or 425F 1979 stoves. You probably need to go ahead and discard and not worry about, because here is that same model stove, but with a different year code, all from the 90s and the 80s. And the best sold that they had was $180 plus $75 shipping. Now, it was brand new. Brand new in the box. But how many times have you guys gone and said, I'm going to go do something really cool over the weekend? You bought all the stuff to go do it. Something happened and you never went. I don't know, maybe you didn't go camping, and you shoved it into a corner and you shoved it up on the top shelf and you never used it. This stuff comes around new in the box more often than you would realize. And again, this one, that stove sold for $180, well worth my time. These stoves are all gas. I just saw the question. So yes, they're all gas. Again, propane when it comes to Coleman is no game. Just step over it. There are some exceptions, but they're so incredibly rare, it's not likely you're ever going to find them. I will show you the exception when it comes to a different company, though, here in just a minute. So again, always put in the model and the year, okay? Because it can make a huge difference. If you just put in the model, you can get 500 returns, and you won't know what you actually have until you put the year in. And I will tell you that out of these 6 returns here, the folks that sold them for $100 undersold them for $100 in free shipping. They could have easily kept the $100 on them, put the shipping on them, and got it probably without much of a problem. Now, stoves are a slower mover than lanterns, just be aware. You very likely have a half a dozen of those stoves sitting in your rafters, Miss Linda. Okay. So in addition to the color, to the date code and the model, it's all about the colors. Okay. So I've already showed you this lantern once. I'm not going to show it to you again. Actually, I showed it to you a couple times. Here is model 200A in red. Now I pulled them up and there was 1,000 of these lanterns sold over the last 90 days with an average selling price of right around 101 bucks. Okay. Now, if you look over at the actual sold listings that I have listed there and shown there, this is what being in original, almost unburned or new shape with the original packaging, because remember, this packaging was all ephemera. It wasn't meant to be kept. And the accessories, meaning the case, the top 3 solds were all right at $500 for this lantern. Like I said, I've sold this lantern on probably half a dozen times over the last few years. And I've sold them anywhere. One of them I sold with absolutely no globe. The no globe, the glass, the top was bent, half the finish was gone, and I still sold it for about $50 plus shipping. And the gentleman who got it was more than happy to have it. Okay, so that's in red. But let's look at this same lantern in green. Now, they didn't make as many green ones in 200 Alpha as they did in red. There was only 109 returns. Now, the average sale price went up a little bit. Not huge, but look at the lanterns that were actually returned and look at the years that those were made in. The red ones that I took and just showed you, there was a 50s example, a 60s example, and a 70s example. These are all from the 80s. So again, how many people in the 80s decided, hey, I want to go camping, took this gas stove apart, and it's in pieces when you get it. They looked at it and went, oh, I ain't putting this thing together because the globe's off. You got to put the mantles on. You got to put the top on it. And they went, no, that's just way too complex. And then went and bought themselves a propane stove. And that thing got shoved up in a corner somewhere and found until the 2020s. And now I get to go find it and flip it for 500 bucks. So they are out there. You do find them. But now if you take red and you take green and put them together, then you have what's called a Coleman Christmas stove. They made this stove from 1951 into the middle 80s. So there's lots of versions of these stoves. They made them for years. Okay. And there was only 42 of them. And I will tell you that the last about 10 listings really drove down the average sale price of $320. If you look at the solds that are there, if you find them in excellent condition, $700 to $900 is not out of the realm of possibilities. They consistently sell. I will tell you that they move. They do not stick around. This color combination is another one of those things that if you find it, you have the same direction from me as far as you buy it, and then you contact me directly because it must be disposed of immediately. I have actually never found one of these in the wild, and they're one of my holy grails. Jason, this is like my Flowbee, I guess. This is my Flowbee to you.
Yes, because I never found it. You mean the white whale?
It's the white whale. I've never found one. We were talking the other day. I've actually found 2 Flowbees this year. I've been lucky.
All right, I'm gonna go find one of these tomorrow. Then just
there you go. But you're supposed to PM me and send it to me immediately.
Oh, all right, yeah, okay.
Disposed of.
All right, I'm gonna do it right now.
There you go. All right. Now, the one thing, if you look at these 3 listings that I really like about it, the opening photos, if you look closely, you'll realize that they took pictures of them actually functioning. That is a great listing tip and something that I'm probably going to start stealing when I do mine. When I list these lanterns and I've tested them, I always, always, always take a picture of them lit and in the complete darkness. So I don't do a video of them because there's probably not anything more boring than watching a lantern function. But the people that are buying it, if you take the effort to light them and take a picture of them lit, it shows that they work, and you will have a lot easier time selling it. Again, the Christmas lanterns sell really, really well. Now, there's one other color that you need to keep an eye out for. Now, if you think about this, if you found that same lantern in gold and you saw it hanging on the side of a garage when you're at a yard sale, do you think you would probably notice that, now that we're talking about this, from the other side of the yard? I hope you would. And it's worth you walking over and picking it up. If you find any lantern or any stove in gold and it says Coleman and it's $10 or $20, I don't care what condition it is in, you buy it. Okay. They sell consistently. And the average sale price was $689 on these lanterns. Now there's only 9 of them sold. They're rare. They make more than just the 200 alpha in gold. If you remember the first listing that I showed, I'd actually showed a series of 3 lanterns. They were all gold. They were 3 lanterns that they produced it in gold, and well worth your time. So, does it work with stoves? Yes, it does. If you look at the listings here, that bottom listing, this is a 425F, 425E model. Now, these are all from the early 70s, 70, 71, 72. That bottom listing is a green stove, in green, brand new, unfired, with the original box, and it sold for $200 plus shipping. If you look at the listing just up above it, that is the exact same stove within a year of manufacture, sold in gold on bids, and I think they undersold it, I'll be honest with you, for $512 plus shipping. And when you open up that listing, the picture, if you look just above the canister that holds the fuel, there's actually a huge scorch mark in the gold where they actually damaged the finish, and it is in rough shape, and it sold for $512. Best sold was $1,000. Okay. So again, if you're at a yard sale, you're at a thrift store, you're at an estate sale, and you see anything that says Coleman and it's gold and it's within your comfort zone to start extracting money out of your pocket, in other words, it's $20 or $30 or less, I personally wouldn't even look it up. I'm just starting to buy it. Okay. Now let's talk about Coleman Peak 1 just a little bit. You won't find these very often. Coleman didn't make a whole lot of them, but they are highly desirable by people who actually functionally use them, as well as collectors. Okay. So Peak 1 is actually their backpacking versions. I showed you the Exponent stove earlier. That is a part of their Peak 1 line, $600. This is what you're commonly going to find, which is the brown version. They made it in several other colors. That can vary the price a bit. And remember what I said, these things are hiding in plain sight. Every time I've ever found one of these, only once did I find it. It was a lantern, and I found it sitting on a table. Every other time I found this, it's been sitting in its case, or it was hidden in a vintage backpack that I picked up too, which is something we can talk about next time. I picked up the stove that I'm going to show you later that tragically didn't make it through testing. I found it in a vintage backpack that thankfully I flipped for about $150, and I paid $20 for both pieces, and it was hiding in there within a case that was actually like this one over my shoulder. That's red, but it's just a smaller version of it. Looks exactly like this. It's just smaller to hold that. To hold it. It's always hiding in the cases that are in that slide on the right-hand side that you're viewing. The silver case, it holds a stove. The lower case also holds a stove. And again, they make a red case that holds a stove and the lantern. They also make lantern cases that are similar to the green one that you see in the bottom. That lantern case the stove case that's maroon, it's nylon, that actually sold for $25 alone on eBay. So even if you find the cases for it, it's worth, and you're only paying a quarter or 50 cents for them, like Peggy probably would. They're well worth your time to pick up. Okay. Now these two here, they sold together in a lot. Again, I think they undersold this for $217 for the pair plus $15 shipping, which would have been, or $16.50 shipping, which would have been more than enough to cover it. That's a pretty decent payday if you're paying $10 or $20 for the set. Typically, for most everything that I'm showing you, I rarely pay more than $20 for the item. And most times, I'm in the $5 to $10 range. So again, I don't know about you, but I'll take $20 and flip it into $200 any day of the week. I will tell you, I think they undersold this set. I personally would not have put it on bids. I would have taken some better photos of both of them operating because neither one of them were new. And I would have listed them in the $325 range, best offer, and taken the first offer that was close to $300. Okay. So I think that's enough about Coleman. Let's take a little bit of time to talk about Primus. Okay, now remember Optimus and Primus, the transformers that you want to start looking at. These were built started being built in 1892 as and advertised as the first free kerosene stove. There's an example of it. These things were known to be so bulletproof and so reliable that they were used on many of the earliest expeditions. They were used on the first failed expedition on Mount Everest. They were taken to the North Pole. They have been through a lot. If you find one of these in that condition that you see there, they're actually not overly valuable. It's as you would think, as some of them get that stove's worth a couple $100. Now, again, if you're paying $20 for it, that's a nice return. Now they merged with Optimus in the 1960s, which with some of their stoves can make it a little bit confusing because they can be dual branded. You will see Optimus as well as Primus logos on it. Some of them could be made from the same years and the same model, and they'll have one or the other. Usually doesn't affect the overall price of either one of them, but just be aware that in the 1960s, it can get a little muddy. They are a Swedish company. And so you want to take, and if you see made in Sweden and you see Primus, it's worth looking up. Of course, if you start looking at some of their new stuff, where'd it go? This is a newer label, but they make a tremendous amount of other outdoor gear. This is actually a titanium kettle, tea kettle. Weighs about 4 ounces. That's one of the things I take out with me and enjoy. So they make a lot of different gear. And if you find some of it, it's worth picking up, but we'll just focus on the stoves for tonight. All right. Okay. So go ahead and bring me back to the slides there, Jason. All right. And then again, they make a lot of other things. They do make some lanterns, or did make some lanterns. They're not overly exciting. And I'm trying to find the lantern here for you. The lantern. Yeah, Prius lantern. Here's the case. Here's the box. They look a little bit like this. Oh, here it is. Jason, big screen. There. They're not overly valuable, but that's the lantern that you'll typically find in the United States. They're little backpacking lanterns sold under the Century brand. And they're propane. Remember, propane for the most cases, no gain. But you might find them. Again, for our purposes tonight, they're mostly a stove company. All right, back to the slide deck here. So here's the first one I'm going to show you, which is the Primus 8R. Okay. I have found this stove on several different occasions. And remember I told you, think about the transformers. When you see these things, they will typically look like the picture on the right. Okay. That doesn't look like anything that you would normally take and even think about looking at. It's about the size of 4 decks of cards. So, you know, that whole thing is about that big around and about that tall. They are very, very small, and they transform out into what you see there. Now, they're in the last 90 days that sold 57 times in the Primus version. They have a sell-through rate of about $175. And what you see there is a fairly typical price that you'll get for them. Every one of these stoves that I've ever bought, I've never paid more than $5 for. Now, if you recognize that size and you recognize how it unfolds, there are multiple other models that they make that you could find as well, like the 1100 or the 111C, the Radius 43, the 210 Sport. Those are all, if you're paying $5 to $10 for, well worth your time to pick up. And even if you find ones that look like it and there's no markings on them at all, there was a ton of Russian clones that were made that look just like the same thing. Even the Russian clones sell for $40 to $50. So again, worth your time to look up. Now back to the version that I found. In fact, I found this just a couple weekends ago. I paid $3 for it, and it is an early 60s version. Now, if you look at that picture, it has a tremendous amount of what I call trail patina. This thing was hammered. In fact, when I sent a picture of it to Jason, he was telling me it looked like garbage, and it did. I did nothing to the stove other than I put fuel in it and tested it, and it worked, but not very well. I just disclosed it in the listing. In fact, if you see my listing there, it says right in the condition description, it says stove has tons of trail patina, dents, dings, rust, and loss of finish to the case, tested and functions. And down in the rest of the description, if you read more, I just said the flame is weak and will need to be rebuilt. I didn't get $107 for it. Again, this one was almost like for parts. It was probably one of the roughest ones I've ever sold. I usually get a little more than this out of them. I took a best offer of $75. It was a slow week. If I had waited, I probably would have gotten my $107 plus my shipping. But I went ahead and flipped it, and guess what? It got to him in a couple days, and I even got stellar feedback. So even on that stove, rough as shape as it was, the guy was over the moon to absolutely have it. So now you start to identify that size and the case. Here is another transformer in Primus that will blow your mind. This is a 41 number. It's a Primus number 41. You can look at the top of that case, and it has been through a lot. It's been carried around the back of the backpack. That picture on the right-hand side of the fuel canister actually has a ding in the top of it. Okay. I don't know about you, but it's well worth my time to sell that thing for $1,500. That will pay for your secret beach cruise and many other things if that's what you want. Okay. Now remember, when it comes to Primus, I told you that there's an exception to the rule, and it's Primus. If any of you are my age or Jason's age, you might remember the multicolored stoves that you saw when you were growing up. They're made out of extremely thin tin or steel, and they were yellow, greens. They like like mint greens and oh man, I think I've seen them in red and multiple other like really weird color combinations. Those, for the most part, are Primus stoves. They were sold under the Century name as well as Sears. Both of them are worth your time to look up. They used cylinders, the little tiny cylinders like this of propane. They will work with the larger cylinders as well. Those all sell if they're in, now they have to be in good shape. If they've been ran through the mud, just let them go because people don't want them. But you can get well over, you know, $100 to $200 for this stove if you can find them. And I've found them before. Now, one other stove that I want to tell you about when it comes to Primus and propane. Here is an example of the craziness that you can find. Now, I showed you a $1,500 Primus stove. That was a gas stove. This is a propane one. Again, Primus being the one exception to the rule. If you look at the picture on the right-hand side, you'll see that that is actually a propane burner. That's how you can really identify propane. Besides, does it have a place for a bottle to hook up, and it doesn't have a separate tank. Is you look at the burner, and if it has a series of little holes like that, it's more than likely a propane stove. Okay. Now get ready to be mind blown because this one is a very rare stove. If you found it, this one sold for, wait for it, come on, internet, $2,850. Now, Jason, can you put me on the big screen for just a second? I'm sure some of you are wondering, you'll never find something rare like that. Now, I don't have that exact stove. But guess what this is? This is it's unmarked, but I am 99.9% sure that this is a Primus propane stove that I have taken and discussed with multiple experts who are in the collecting field, and they haven't been able to identify it for me yet. So I'm going to have to get a hold of Primus and see if I can find it, if they can identify it for me. If that is a Primus stove, that one's probably going to sell in approximately the same price range. So they are out there. You just got to go through a lot of coal before you find the diamonds. All right, let's get back to the slides. So on to the next company, which is Optimus. Weird. It was originated in Stockholm, Sweden. Same country as Primus. Okay. Same idea. They got started in the kerosene industry. In fact, the kerosene stove industry. In fact, if you look at it, they pretty much copied the Primus company, but they also manufactured lanterns as well. Again, used on many of the very first huge expeditions that explorers used to go around the world. They have been known. Optimus is actually one of my favorite companies. Now, Optimus has some stoves that Primus didn't have. Here is the Optimus 111. All right. There are 72 of those that were sold over the last 90 days. They have an 80% sell-through rate, and 50% of them sold for greater than $200. Those are the three best sellers. One of them was in the United States. Two of them, I think, were from Norway. But if you look down through, you'll find plenty of them. They were exported out to the United States, and you can certainly find them. I was discussing this presentation with a friend of mine today at work, and I mentioned to him the Optimus 111, and he goes, "I've got one of those sitting in my backpack at home." So little did he know, he probably has a $500 stove sitting in his backpack. He actually works in the mountain rescue here in the local area. So they are available. You can find them. Again, look for Optimus. Now, here is another version. There we go. This one, you are more than likely to find over some of the 111 stoves. These they made literally millions of. Okay, I actually have a version of it. Rhonda, would you hand it to me? that I found the other day. I found it in the original box. No, the 1, 2, 3.
The 1, 2, 3.
Yep. Thank you. This was the one I was showing you with all the accessories earlier. It's not a very big stove. Very thin. Okay. When I found this one, it was looking like, it looked like this sitting on the table when I found it. Doesn't look like much, does it? I had this one listed for $124. It's not one of the really nice other versions that you saw, but still it's a good functional stove. And I don't know about you, but I paid $5 for it. I have it listed for 124. I'll take the first offer over $100 and I'll run. Okay. So back to the slide, Jay. Now, if this one that I have is version 3, these are the first versions, and they are found in the boxes and new. Or actually, no, these are all pre-owned. If you found it new, it's about a $600 stove. Again, getting back to the ephemera, the box and the instructions that all came with them, they weren't meant to last. And here they are. You're finding pre-owned ones that have everything in it with all the accessories that come with it. And you're looking at a $500 bill. Again, you can see 44 of them sold over the last 90 days, 80% sell-through rate. I will tell you the sell-through rate is affected because when I was looking at the sell-through rate, it also shows parts. So all of a sudden, maybe all the parts don't sell. But I will tell you that if the stoves are priced correctly, they're going to move. And most of them sold for $100 or more. Okay. There are, like I said, Optimus did make some lanterns, but it's very unlikely you're going to find them. They are highly valuable if you do. But every version I've ever found, I've never seen one in the United States. Every version I've ever found, it's been overseas, over in Norway or Sweden. Okay, here's one of them that they've sold. It's their 930 model. I love it because it has their huge globe logo right on the glass globe, just prominent sitting there. I think it just looks awesome. But here's, I think, one of the prettiest stoves that you'll ever find. Again, these are made out of nickel plated brass. Absolutely gorgeous, great construction. And you see what that actually sold for, which was $621 on bids. So again, if you find one and you see Optimus on it, you see a lantern, it's an auto buy, because I've never, like I said, I've never seen one personally in the United States, and I'd have to go into Worth Point and Terra Peak. I'm sure there's some that have made it over here to the United States, but very, very rare. Okay. So if you're out and you're doing the sourcing and you find one of the stoves and it's kind of hammered up, or maybe you don't find the whole thing, or it's missing accessories, don't overlook the parts. Okay. So right here is a listing, same 1, 2, 3 Sevia stove from Optimus that I was showing you. What that listing is for this piece right here. That's $75. Again, I paid $5 for the stove. I could start parting it out and probably make more out of it. This one's just in such nice shape, I really don't want to do it to it. So here's that's $75 for that. Go back to the slides, Jay. This is just for the cup. So another $75 just for the cup if it's in extremely good shape. The next one, the next part is just the key. Is just this key on with the attaching piece, which I don't have, unfortunately. It's $50. And then just, I'll hit it so you can see it. That's the key to my heart. You got it, Jay. Just the burner deflector. Now this one isn't marked correctly, so it wouldn't be as valuable. But the original burner reflector with the right marking on it, it's a $50 bill. So again, well worth your time to start looking up and seeing what you can find. All right. In fact, there you go, Jay. Thanks. You advanced it for me. Okay. I think that's enough to show that there is enough of these things out here that you can possibly find them. I hope I've shown some of those things that might actually blow your mind, and I hope you actually find them out there. But once you get them sourced and you bring them home, you got to ask yourself a question. Do I want to test them, or do I just list them for parts? You should be determining that in the field as to whether I want to take and go tackle that and not waste a lot of time in your effort. Most of the time, if you find a stove or you find a lantern that you want to flip, more than likely it's worth being able to sell for parts, and you don't even need to test it. But if you do, and you're somewhat mechanically inclined, if you can change your own oil, you can fix a pressurized gas lantern by any company. I promise you, it's not that hard. Okay, they're a pretty easy item to fix. But before you test them or before you fix them, there are tons of collectors out there and tons of people who work on them that restore them. Please get on YouTube, watch a video. I cannot show you how to operate every one of these and how they're supposed to be operated safely in, well, it should have been an hour, but we're going to be well over that as we get through the end of this. But take a few minutes, pull up a YouTube video and show how and look at how you're supposed to test them, or how you're supposed to functionally work on them, or how to light them. Because remember, you are dealing with open flames and you are dealing with pressurized systems. Things can and do go wrong on occasion. Okay. So if you're looking at a stove or a lantern and you see something that says gas or petrol, please do not automatically assume that that means unleaded fuel. Okay. That does not mean automatically unleaded fuel. Now, there are stoves that do run unleaded. In fact, if you look at this little stove, which is actually a modern stove, this is one I've taken. This is an expedition grade stove. It's actually made by Optimus. They still manufacture the stove today. The only difference is mine that I have was made in Sweden, and the ones that are made now are made in China. So you definitely want the original vintage ones. These are from the 90s that I own. I own a couple of them. They are meant to run on unleaded, kerosene, diesel, and jet fuel. Jet fuel, which is JP5 or JP8, which is just a dirty version of diesel, really. Okay. Well, if you don't change your own oil, maybe it's time to sell them for parts. And believe me, there's plenty of them that are worth not even messing with, that are just worth selling for parts only, or separating out for the parts. Okay. So go ahead and bring it back to the slide there, Jay, if you don't mind. All right. So 99% of the time, when you look at these stoves, if you use white gas in them, which is sold under many different names, you have Coleman fuel, MSR makes a version of it, Brunton makes a version of it. You go out and you find white gas, what's called white gas or stove fuel. I've got a bottle of it right here. It's sold in a can, Coleman wise, about that big. Okay. Most of the things that I'm showing you tonight, you can run this in it and you'll be just fine. Okay. But please, and if it was able to take unleaded fuel, you can run this in it and it'll be okay. It's really just a really clean burning fuel that's not going to take and burn quite as hot and build quite as much pressure as some of the other fuels. Okay. By all means, though, take and set yourself up well and safely and go ahead and test them. But again, take a moment to look at the instructions and figure out how to actually do it correctly. Now, if you start to pressurize your system, in other words, if it has a pump on the stove like I was showing you earlier, so if you start to take and you grab a hold of this little priming pump and you start pumping it up and you hear a hissing sound, I don't know if you can hear that, but if you hear that hissing sound, stop. That means you have a leak. And that means that if you take and you start to light that stove or the lantern, you're going to have a mess on your hands if you're not careful. So if you're going to, once you pressurize it, if you hear a hissing sound or you see any leaking fuel, just stop, assess the situation, and fix the problem before you light it. Because if you don't, you're going to have a system that will just continue to take and feed itself and create quite the flamethrower for you. Okay. Light it in an area outside that if it goes and starts to run away from you, that it's can be safe and it can burn out. Once you've tested it and you're okay, I wouldn't light them inside, but they're more than safe to work outside. In all the years that I've been doing this, I've had a couple that had issues and failures when we were testing them or when we were using them, but for the most part, we've always been able to recover them. And for the times that you can't, you want to keep a fire extinguisher handy, because this is what can happen. Okay. Here's a little Peak One stove that I promised you I'd show you again. If you take and you see the red box there, what's around that in the aerial is actually pointing to what it says fuel cap. Okay. What happened is I was testing this outside next to our home, and I had the system pressurized. I had it lit. Everything was going all well, good and dandy. And underneath that fuel cap, there is a little O-ring that's underneath there. That O-ring failed. Of course, the system's pressurized. It atomized the fuel, shot it up into the burner, and I had a nice flamethrower. And if you look at the pictures on the right-hand side, you can see I had this stove out with the fire extinguisher in probably less than 10 seconds after it failed, and it still got hot enough that it started to melt the knobs, the plastic knobs that were on the stove. So do it outside, be careful, use the right fuel, make sure you take and watch a YouTube video to show that that shows, so you learn it to know what you're doing, but don't be terrified of it. I've literally lit thousands of these things. I've had a couple failures over the years. Most times when they have failed, it's something that you just have to wait and it will burn out, but it doesn't go high order like this one did. This was the one and only time I've actually ever had one that really went flamethrower. I had a probably about a 6-foot flame coming out of the top of that. Yes. Do not put white gas in styrofoam. Don't put any kind of petroleum product in styrofoam. It will melt it. Okay. So again, take the time, test them, but be careful. Make sure you understand what fuel it is that you need, and get an idea what you're doing before you light them. Okay. Now, here's some shipping tips. Number one, always, 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 always remove the fuel. Okay. What I do is I take, and when I test them, I put new fuel in it. Okay. And then I take and put new fuel in it when I test them. And then I have a funnel and I put it right back in the can and reuse the fuel. Absolutely no harm, no foul, no point in buying new fuel. But definitely do not try to ship it with fuel in it. It's a hazardous material, and if it leaks, USPS or FedEx is probably going to be giving you a call, and they're not going to be very happy because you've made a huge flammable issue for them. Okay, especially if it's going air, because it's going to pressurize as you fly up, and they're not going to explode, but it could leak. All right. When it comes to a lantern, always take and remove the mantles. All right. Here, Jay, if you could. Right here is a mantle. Okay. Take and remove those before you ship it. Because if you don't, they will fall. Let me get my drink out of my way so I don't put it in it. They will fall, and these things will just come apart, and they're very brittle. And if you ship it with the mantles in it, it is very likely to come apart, and you're going to have mantly yellow, white mess all over the interior stove. What you want to do is ship it with brand new mantles. And a lot of times when you buy the stove, especially or a lantern, if you buy a lantern that's in a case, if you look at the bottom of the case, you'll find a package of lanterns that look just like this. Okay, very simple, just a string lantern, and it's on the floor. Where'd it go? Sorry. Oh, there it is. Sorry. And it will look like that. They tie on real simply. If when you're testing it, you need to put one of these on, you literally put it around the little nipple where it goes. There's a ring there, and you just tie a couple overhand knots in it, and then you light it with a lighter and let it burn down to ash, and then you light the stove. So take the mantles out, because you'll leave your customer a mess if you don't, and ship them with new mantles.
Like the ash.
Yep. Yes, but you have to. Yes, they can go air, but you have to remove the fuel. You would not want to try to send a propane stove or lantern with a propane canister air. But yes, they can go air as long as you empty them. Now, I send most of them FedEx ground just because of the weight. All right. Another thing you want to do is any of the handles, take the time to take some of the blue painter's tape and tape the handles down, because if you're sitting there shipping and it's doing this as it's shipping, it's going to take and ding the finish, which is not going to make your customer very happy. What I would tell you is to take and install the globe and actually ship it with the globe installed. But what you do is you want to take and put the globe in here. Jason, if you go and put me on big screen here again real quick. Okay. Oh. All right. So what you want to do is I will take on a lantern like this, I will put foam down here, some of the very thin foam. That's just enough padding to slide this in here, because I'm really not necessarily looking for the padding, but I'm looking to take up the space so it doesn't do this as it's going down the road, right? I will put a little bit of foam on the top here. I'll literally take and put a hole in it and set it over the top. And then I will take a little bit of the foam and stick it right in there. Because what I'm trying to do is secure this down, because when you put the lid on it, right now that lid's on there, and can you see the play there? I want to take up that play. I will tell you that in 40 years of playing with lanterns and carrying them around, I have carried them in their accessory cases. I've broken probably 2 or 3 globes, and believe me, I'm rough on my lanterns when I'm actually out in the field using them. So these globes are actually pretty tough. So really what you're trying to do is just keep that thing from moving. And the safest place to take and ship that globe is actually in the installed area, because it gives it the most protection. I'll put that globe on there. I'll tape down the handles. I'll put some bubble wrap around the entire thing, and down the road it'll go. If it's a very expensive lantern, go ahead and put the slide back up, Jay. If it's a very expensive lantern, what I'll do is I'll take and try to find a case for it if I can. It's just going to increase your value. It also makes it a lot safer to ship it. But obviously put it in a box with some packing peanuts, and it should be safe. Most lanterns that I've shipped, I shipped in a 12 by 12 by 12 box, 2 of them. So 12 by 12 box by 12 box, put it down, put the lantern down in it, fill it with packing peanuts, put another 12 by 12 by 12 box on top, and then and down the road it goes. I have never had a problem shipping a lantern with a globe like that. If I had a $900 lantern, I might pull the globe out and separate it out from shipping. But again, in all the years that I've been playing with lanterns, I've only broken a couple of these globes. And again, I am probably way tougher when we're out camping and in the field with them than any USPS driver or UPS or FedEx driver could possibly be on them. And I don't protect them in their cases, and they're actually pretty tough. Now, when you're going to be shipping any of the big stoves, what you want to do is, sorry, this is a fuel canister for a big Coleman stove. It is designed to go in the stove. You want to secure it inside the stove. Do not just let it sit there and rattle around, because it will beat the finish up. It will beat the interior of the stove up, and it'll just sit there, rattle, and make all sorts of noise. So if you're fixing to ship any of the big stoves or any stove that has an external fuel tank that's separate, obviously take the time to take and secure that within the stove. They're all designed to be packaged and moved interior of the stove, but make sure to take up that space so it's not rattling around, because it's going to tear up the finish. Okay. Yes, you want to use painter's tape. If I didn't say that earlier, when you're taping these things down, use painter's tape. The finish on these things, they're meant to be used and be outside, so it's pretty tough. But you don't want to use anything that's going to leave a residue. Definitely take and use the painter's tape. If you're shipping it with the box, any of the original box, you want that box to get to your customer in the same shape as the pictures that you show it in your listing. Okay. So take the time to protect that box, and then check your shipping costs prior to listing. So I know that for a lantern, I can put $20 shipping on any lantern I sell, and I can get it from here to New York, FedEx ground, no problem. Okay. But your mileage is going to vary depending on where you're at, because it could vary, again, region to region, and how much weight you're going to actually have. But for me, knowing that I'm in the northwest corner of the United States, obviously the furthest I'm going to ship is down to Florida. I put $20 shipping on every one of my stoves. Nobody has, or not stoves, but lanterns. Nobody's ever scoffed at the price. And I box it up again in a 12 by 12. It usually ends up about 18 inches tall when I'm done. And I've been able to ship every one of them. The heaviest one that I've ever shipped, I think, is about 7 pounds, and I've been able to get it to wherever it needed to go for the price. And these are not things that you're going to want to take and sell internationally and deal with the international shipping. I put GSP on mine. I have sold one in the last several years overseas. So there are overseas collectors that do want these things. And with that, that's the end.
Yeah, so let me add a couple things with questions. And yeah, Nadine, you need to stay far away from things with fuel as humanly possible. So
Jason, I'm sorry I thought I had this nailed at an hour. I apologize for going so far over.
Oh, it's quite all right. But I was trying to get Rhonda to laugh because I could hear her, and I just messaged her. I'm like, is it Saturday yet?
I didn't see it.
I know.
Yeah, she's been over here trying to
laugh.
give me messages if I look distracted. I'm like, stop.
I was so hoping you would have read it because I can hear you, and I'm like, I want to hear her chuckle. All right, so Linda, I think we covered most of your great questions, and they were great questions. I knew Roy was going to get to most of them, so I don't think we missed any. So Linda, let me know, or anybody, obviously, let me know if you have any other questions that Roy didn't cover. She does say, I would love testing tips so I don't singe off my eyebrow.
So I will tell you that if you get one of these items and you need some help, give me a PM. We can FaceTime. I can walk you through it. So,
well, if you're going to help somebody maybe not burn off their eyebrows, we have to do this live in the Secret Beach just in case it happens.
Do you remember the fire extinguisher?
Entertaining.
Yeah.
Just saying.
It's always a little bit of intrepidation when you light one of these the first time, especially if you know it's been sitting there for 40 or 50 years, because you're worried about the seals. But I actually, come to think of it, I did have one other. I had a lantern that ran away on me about 20 years ago. We were at the end of a dock fishing at about 2:00 in the morning. There might have been a beer or two involved, and that one we didn't try to save. We just pushed it off the end of the dock into the lake, and it took care of it just fine.
You're good.
We're good.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, I knew we would catch most of Linda's questions. And I gotta say, between tonight and the last couple of shows I did, Linda has been the best question asker of anybody. So we like Linda because it's great. It's great when people ask questions because A, it shows they're paying attention, but B, it sometimes propels things along. And C, even in these kind of settings, some people are too shy to even type a question. So if you've got a question, pop it up there, even if you kind of know the answer, because you might be helping someone, some people won't ever do it in a live setting. I don't have that problem, but some people still won't even type them. So I bet you every time I share a Linda question, someone's going, "Oh, thank God Linda asked."
Okay. So there is one thing that I didn't add to the presentation, and Rhonda is just absolutely insistent that I make sure that everybody knows this. Remember, you're dealing with collectors here. For a lot of the stuff that I showed you tonight, buyers love the history. I've actually have a customer that once I sold him the lantern, he asked, he wanted to know any of the details. Yeah, when it was bought, who had it, what kind of adventures that it was on, because that was the one that I told you that I sold that looked like it had been drugged behind a Dodge down a dirt road.
The red one?
The red one. And he restores them. And when he does the restoration, he actually likes to take and share the history of it when he resells it. So unfortunately, I bought it at an estate sale for like $2 and I didn't have any history, which didn't thrill him, but
yeah, I sold a tiki piece today, and he wanted the history. I'm like, well, here's the history. My friend gave it to me to sell.
There you go.
That's all I got. I tried to work it into my decor, and I couldn't fit it. It was just too big. And then we ended up having a nice tiki conversation, and he's opening a tiki bar. So so definitely respond when people ask, but be honest. Don't be like, oh, here's the story, and when it's don't waste time making it up. I was just honest. Friend gave it to me to sell, and that's all I know.
But it's okay to say, hey, I found it at an estate sale in this area, but I'm sorry, that's the only information I have for you.
Oh yeah, Linda did ask that. She said, where are you finding most of your stuff? Or somebody asked that. Is it estate sales or someplace else?
So I find it in estate sales, yard sales. I have found oh God, I got so many things sitting here. I think that was my one downfall. I had too many examples to grab a hold of. These Primus lanterns, I actually got at Goodwill.
Oh yeah,
I got them on off day. I'll sell the pair for probably $40. I think I paid $1.50 a piece for them. So,
but they lasted long enough, which means somebody wasn't paying attention, and they lasted long enough to reach half off day.
Yeah, it's always boggles my mind when you find something really, really good, and you're like, how have all these thrifters missed this for like 5 weeks?
Yeah,
right.
But to answer the question, mostly I find them at estate sales is usually where I'll find the good ones. And it's funny because most estate sale companies just assume it's a Coleman lantern is a Coleman lantern is a Coleman lantern or stove, and they list them at $10, and down the road they go. So they never look them up. Now, if they had one of the originals that was all, the nickel colored brass, they're probably going to look it up. They're probably going to figure out what they have, just because it is distinctly different than most Coleman stuff.
I will say, thinking back to the garage sales I've been to in the last and estate sales the last 16 years here, I've seen the lanterns and the stoves, but because I'm not an outdoorsy guy, I would just walk right by them. Not even, of course, everything's worth something, but the prices you shared tonight, I'm just like, I would have never guessed that. Never. Mm-hmm. And I'm just like, now I'm like, damn, I want to go to an estate sale tomorrow.
Yeah. So, of course, the prices I'm showing you are the exception to the rule.
Oh yeah. Right? Oh yeah.
You're gonna have to walk. But I will tell you that you would be amazed at how many of them are worth $100 to $150.
Yeah.
It is mind blowing how often you'll find them. And I've gotten to the point that if I find them and they're less than $50, I just leave them there because there is some work to making sure to get the shipping correct and get it delivered to them and everything else. Because I'm the guy that I have to test it. And so if I'm going to test it, I've got to be able to sell it for more than $50 and make a decent profit out of it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Roy.
But
That was incredible. It's something new that I think most of us have not looked at, have walked right past. I know Linda is sending Henry up to the rafters of the garage after this is over. And so I'm excited. I'm always excited when we learn something new, especially something where most of us aren't clued in at all. And so that's cool. And the only bummer is we're like, we're not really going out, most of us. So
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
yeah,
any other Saturday, I'd rather be like, oh, let's get up and go to estate sales.
I will tell you that this year has been my slowest year of finding any outdoor gear. I think everybody's saving it in case the apocalypse comes. They're especially here. Really, the one thing that most people can do is go camping. So they're saving a lot of their outdoor gear. There's some of it available, and I will promise to you today that when we do part 2, I'm going to make sure I have a little better internet, so it's not quite as distracting with me going.
So it's not quite as Peggy as we like to call it.
Yeah.
And Linda's calling to see Rhonda. So, Rhonda, you want to stick your head in here and say hi or goodbye, for that matter?
She's a much better looking half.
All right, there's Rhonda. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening. Stay safe, and if you do go out tomorrow and hit some sales or whatever, let us know if you find anything. Now it's in your brain. Let us know if you find anything, because I and Roy will be excited to see if you find anything. So
yeah, no doubt. And if you find something you need some help, feel free to shoot me a PM.
Coolio. And with that, we are out here. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful Friday night, and we'll see you around the Secret Beach. Bye-bye.
Bye.